You know that strange feeling when something about her behavior doesn't sit right, but you can't prove anything. Not cheating, not lying, nothing clear. Just this quiet pressure in your chest telling you something is off. And the worst part is, every time you try to understand it, you somehow end up feeling like the problem is you. That is exactly how mind games work. They don't explode like a fight, they slowly twist your perception until you start doubting your own judgment. If you're a man trying to navigate modern dating, you need to see this clearly, because the biggest mistake men make with mind games is this. They try harder instead of stepping back. They text more, explain more, prove more, and that reaction gives the game exactly what it needs to continue. If you're the kind of man who wants to see the truth instead of chasing confusion, subscribe now. Not because I'm asking you to, but because men who understand psychology protect themselves better. Now, let's look at something most guys miss. The first sign she is playing mind games is when attention suddenly becomes a reward she controls. One day, she's warm, responsive, curious about your life. Then the next day, it feels like you're texting into a wall. You check your phone, nothing. Hours pass. Suddenly, at midnight, she replies with something casual, like nothing happened. Now, look at what happens inside your head. You start analyzing everything. Did I say something wrong? Did she lose interest? Is she seeing someone else? Your brain tries to solve the mystery. But here's what men don't realize. The moment you start chasing clarity emotionally, the balance of power shifts. Human attention works like currency. When someone gives it freely and suddenly withdraws it, your brain interprets that loss as value. That's why inconsistent attention can feel addictive, not because the person is amazing, but because your mind wants to restore stability. The second sign appears when small public moments quietly lower your authority. Maybe you're out with friends. Someone asks a simple question and she makes a sarcastic comment about you. Everyone laughs. It looks playful on the surface, but something about it hits your ego wrong. You laugh it off because you don't want to look insecure, but later that night you replay the moment in your head. That small sting of embarrassment stays there longer than you expected. Here is the truth many men ignore. Respect dynamics in relationships often reveal themselves through small moments in public. When a woman repeatedly creates situations where you feel subtly diminished, it can become a form of control. Not always intentional, but still powerful. Wait, this is where many men lose their footing. Instead of calmly setting boundaries, they either explode later or pretend it didn't matter. Both reactions damage respect. One makes you look unstable, the other makes you look weak. The third sign shows up around jealousy triggers. Imagine this situation. She suddenly asks about another woman in your life, not aggressively, just casually. Maybe she mentions someone she saw liking your photos. You explain everything calmly, nothing suspicious, but then she pulls away emotionally afterward. Less warmth, less effort. This confuses you because the conversation looked normal, but the emotional shift feels real. And here's what many men don't realize. Sometimes jealousy isn't about discovering truth, it's about testing emotional control. If your reaction becomes defensive, anxious, or overly reassuring, the dynamic subtly changes. Your energy moves into proving yourself instead of simply being yourself. The fourth sign is comparison pressure. Maybe she casually mentions another guy, not necessarily an ex, just someone successful, someone confident, someone who does this or does that. At first, it sounds like conversation, but if you notice carefully, the comparison keeps appearing. Now your mind begins measuring itself. Am I doing enough? Am I impressive enough? This is where a lot of men unknowingly enter a performance mindset in dating. Instead of building genuine connection, they start competing with invisible standards. And that one mistake can quietly destroy attraction, because attraction grows strongest when a man is grounded in himself, not when he's trying to prove worth. The fifth sign happens when intimacy is followed by distance. You spend time together. Maybe the date was great. Maybe you shared something personal. Maybe you even felt that rare moment of emotional closeness. Then, suddenly, she becomes colder the next day. This is one of the most confusing patterns men experience because the emotional memory of closeness is still fresh in your mind, but the present behavior contradicts it. Now you feel a subtle urgency to restore that closeness again. But here's the deeper psychology behind this. Emotional push-pull patterns often intensify attachment because the brain tries to recreate the good moment. The problem is, when you chase that feeling, you can become easier to control. The sixth sign appears when her friends suddenly influence how she treats you. Maybe everything between you felt stable. Then she goes out with friends, talks to people, hears opinions. The next time you see her, something feels different, slightly more distant, slightly more critical. Social influence is powerful in modern dating. People often absorb the emotional energy of their social circle without even realizing it. But here's the important thing men forget. You cannot compete with someone's friends or social narrative by arguing. The moment you start defending yourself to outside opinions, you lose stability. The seventh sign shows up around money pressure, not direct requests necessarily, just subtle expectations. Maybe the conversation shifts towards what you provide, what you pay for, what you plan financially. There's nothing wrong with financial standards, but when value becomes tied only to what you spend instead of who you are, a hidden dynamic begins forming. And here's the truth drop many men need to hear. Generosity builds attraction when it comes from strength, but generosity used as proof of worth creates quiet resentment over time. The eighth sign appears when communication becomes emotionally confusing. She says she cares, but her actions feel inconsistent. She says she misses you, but plans keep getting canceled. Your brain starts trying to decode signals instead of simply observing behavior. This is where emotional confusion becomes the real trap, because confused men stay longer than they should. The ninth sign is quiet replacement pressure. Maybe she talks about new people entering her life, not necessarily romantically, just mentions them enough for you to notice. Your mind interprets it as a subtle threat of replacement. Now your emotional energy shifts again. You start trying to secure your position instead of evaluating whether the connection is healthy. And the 10th sign is the most important one, when you notice yourself constantly trying to read her mind instead of trusting your own judgment. That tight feeling in your chest, that quiet anxiety when your phone lights up, the replaying of conversations late at night, those signals from your body matter. Your mind is designed to detect emotional patterns, but when mind games exist, those patterns become foggy on purpose. So what do you actually do about this? First, stop reacting immediately to confusing behavior. Calm observation is power. If someone's behavior feels inconsistent, give it time. Patterns reveal themselves when you stop chasing clarity. Second, shift your mindset from approval seeking to evaluation. Instead of asking, "How do I keep her interested?" ask, "Is this dynamic healthy for me?" That one question changes your emotional posture instantly. Third, communicate with calm clarity when something matters. Not anger, not passive silence. Simple statements like this work surprisingly well. "I like spending time with you, but mixed signals don't work for me." Or this, "I respect honesty more than guessing games." Notice the tone, calm, direct, no emotional begging. Fourth, protect your time and attention. When someone repeatedly creates confusion, reduce emotional investment until actions become clear again. And finally, remember this mindset shift. The goal in dating is not to win someone's attention. The goal is to build a connection where respect flows naturally both ways. When a man understands that, mind games lose their power because he stops chasing clarity from someone who creates confusion. So here's what I want you to do this week. Pay attention to patterns instead of moments. Notice how someone treats you over time. Watch how they respond when you stay calm instead of reacting emotionally. Stop explaining yourself excessively. Stop trying to decode every message and start trusting your internal signals more. If you ever need words in a moment of confusion, keep it simple. "I like clarity." Or even simpler, "I don't play guessing games." Those words don't attack anyone, they simply protect your dignity. And that is the real difference between a man who gets pulled into mind games and a man who quietly steps out of them.